just very, very basic. I have always done it this way. I'm sure there's a million other ways to do it, but I'm going to just make a little ruffle. I have already hemmed the edge here. You can do a little baby hem or any kind of like overlock stitch, or you could even leave it raw. Just depends on what your project calls for. And basically what you're going to do is put 2 long gathering stitches into the top of your ruffle, or if it's a pattern, you might be gathering something as a skirt, or there's a million ways you can use gathering, but for this example, it's just a little piece, a little ruffle. So I'm going to make 2 rows of stitches. I've set my stitch length to 5 here, and I just have it on the straight stitch, and I'm going to put it right on the edge, about 1/8 of an inch away. I'll step my stitch cam so I can see it clearly. And then I'm just going to put these stitches, and I'm also, make sure that you leave a little extra thread on the end so you'll be able to pull them through and gather the piece of fabric easily. Also make sure not to backstitch, because we're going to be pulling these fabric, or pulling the thread rather, through in order to create the gathers. So here's my first row of stitches, and then I'm going to put another row just about 1/4 of an inch away from that row. Again, make sure you have the little tails of thread hanging before you start stitching. And the reason I do 2 rows is just to make sure that the fabric lies flat once it is gathered, because it does become a little bulky, and if it's flat you have a better chance of making it even. Gathering can be really tricky sometimes, so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take 2 of the threads, the top 2 threads, or you can do the bottom 2, whichever you prefer, and you're just going to slide your fabric along those. It's kind of like a little railroad, and it's going to start pulling the fabric together. You can start to see the ruffle being created, and just very carefully go this way. This can be used for a bunch of different things, little skirts, just little frilly details to any project really. And you want to carefully do this because you do not want to lose those threads, because I've broken the threads before and it's so frustrating because you have to do double work and go back and take everything out, so we don't want to do that. So basically, there we have it. Once you have that even, you can go back and top stitch it or insert it into the seam, whatever you'll be doing with your ruffle, but that's basically how you make a ruffle. So for a little bit more structure, pleating is a great option. Sometimes I use this as a little bit of a cheat. If I'm having fit issues, sometimes like the short will be just a little too big or the skirt is just a little too big, so you can just toss a pleat in there, and it's a little bit easier to fit than a dart, for example. So for this tutorial, I have measured out just 3 little pleats here. I wanted to make a 1-inch pleat, which means I marked 2 inches apart because it's going to be folded. So once I fold it over, it's just going to be 1 inch. And then you mark, the next line will be the distance between the pleats. So I just marked 1/2 inch, and then my next pleat will be folded in like this. And again for the 3rd pleat. Once you have these all folded, you can pin them in place if you feel more comfortable that way, or just press them really well. I'm going to pin them quickly. Sometimes they're not as clean as this if you're using it as a little cheat for your pattern piece, or just a project you're trying to finish. You can just fold whatever excess you have and kind of top stitch it in place. I'm sure it's not the most proper way of doing things, but sometimes you just have to get the project done. So here's my little pleats. My edge isn't 100% straight here, but once you have them controlled, you can just top stitch right on top of those pins. So I'm going to take my stitch length back down. I had it pretty high for those ruffles. Just straight stitch all the way across. And again, this is a very, very basic way of pleating, but it can be very helpful if again, you're trying to alter a pattern or add I mean, you can add this as a little detail. It's just a clean and more sharp way to get the same effect as, I guess, gathering can have as well, but it's a little bit cleaner, more structured, and not too difficult.